Greetings, this is Tanya, I love Iodine. This week's video is on Black Walnut. This is in the genus called Juglans, and this is Juglans nigra. It's also known as the American walnut, Eastern black walnut, or other variations similar to those. It's in the family known as the walnut family, Juglandaceae. This is going to fruit from August through October, although the nuts actually aren't quite ready at that point. We'll talk about how to actually prepare those. We're talking about a tree here, and a very large one at that, and it is native to the eastern United States. But before we get started, a disclaimer, I'm not responsible for any injuries or illnesses that result from your actions. You are responsible to do your own research and most importantly, use your common sense. This information is brought to you solely as an educational guide with the best of intentions. It is imperative to always properly identify a plant as safe before you even touch it, let alone consume it. Use this information along with quality field guides, other reliable sources, and or a knowledgeable forager to assist you. Alright, as stated, we're talking about a tree. And this tree gets to be rather large. You might find it 80 feet, maybe a little larger, maybe a little smaller depending on where you are. This is just showing the distribution map in the United States of where this is native. And of course it's also in Canada as well. Let's not forget our neighbors to the north. These are just some other pictures of what you might see. It's also very important when you're looking at trees to actually learn a little bit about the shape of the tree, because in that way you'll be able to identify it year round. There's a lot of trees, most of them, that can be used as a four-season resource. So it's very good to be able to identify a tree, whether it has leaves on it, whether it doesn't, and be able to utilize the tree in the manner in which the season it is. This just shows the actual illustration, just another variation of it. Now this illustration here is interesting because it actually shows a leaflet at the end. Oftentimes there is no terminal leaflet. You're going to find the leaflet on the butternut, which is a related one. But on the black walnut, sometimes you'll find a leaflet out there and other times you won't. Most times I would have to estimate. So it's kind of one of those mixes, things like that. And again, this is just showing, we're dealing with a compound leaf. That's one of the key identifiers that you want to be looking for. You're also going to notice some teeth on it. This isn't like a toothless one. So we'll look more about some of those. And this is also another important way to identify trees is to look at the twigs and the buds and the bud scarring. That's going to show you how the leaves are formed and where they attach. And they are quite good ways to identify trees when they aren't leafing. So this just shows the inner pith of it. It's another way to be able to identify your trees, is to be able to look at them. Don't be taking trees down and cutting them just for your identification purposes. Be mindful of those things. And this just shows some other things that you might see, and it has, of course, the little flowers in the springtime, the little catkins and things like that. And you can get those illustrations and pictures from the USDA website. I have the information at the end of this portion. This just shows you what the nuts are. Now this is actually after the green outer hull is removed. We'll talk about how fun that can be. Quite a messy job, but it is a very worthwhile job. And of course, whenever you open them up, they're going to be nuts, just like walnuts. Now, unlike the English walnuts, which kind of come out in a much bigger fashion, these actually, the cavities are a little bit more partitioned, so they're not as easy to get out. But they're very well worth it. They do have a very distinctive taste, but they're excellent in baked goods. And they're also, good raw. I like them raw. They taste different, but sometimes it's not a taste for some people. Anyway, this just shows some of the pictures. So you might see this about this time. It's August, and this is what they shall be looking like. Now, when you smell them, they have a very interesting smell. They're almost like citrusy, kind of fresh. Very interesting if you kind of, use your finger to break open the cells of the outer part of the hull. It's a very interesting smell. I really like it. I find it very refreshing. And now how we're dealing with this, you can get it, of course, we can find the tree and then we can deal with the green hulls, and then you can use those and tincture those. That's a very good way to do it. Of course, you can buy it commercially as well. Now you can get the powdered dry herb. So what they're going to do is they're going to dry that outer hull and they're going to grind it up. Now, what's going to happen in this outer hull as it starts ripening, it's going to get very black and very staining. So it can be used as a dye. But you do want to use gloves or anything like that whenever you're handling this because they do have a lot of compounds in it. They have iodine and things like that, and a lot of tannins, and these are going to dye your skin. And yes, it will take days, if not longer, to get them off of your skin. Your carpets will be stained. Be very careful about processing these in any area, like of your home or whatever. It's best to do it outside in something that is stain resistant, or you don't mind being stained. Now, the black walnut hull contains juglone, tannins, and iodine. And this combo is a very potent elixir, and it's toxic to a lot of like organisms that are harmful to us. Antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, antihelminth. Antihelminth just means that it kills worms, okay? And antiparasitic, because not all parasites are worms. Some are protozoan parasites. And anyway, the medicinal benefits are concentrated in the green hull. That's what we see here. It's not going to be in the nut. It's not going to be after it's dried. And it's also in the leaves, but that's to a lesser degree. And of course, you want those fresh leaves. It's a potent detoxifier, intestinal cleanser. It's very good for the body. It oxygenates the blood. It helps regulate blood sugar. It's one of my favorite herbs out there. And, well, at the end, I'll tell you a little story. But we'll skip that right now. Anyway, there's some research in the black walnut. Quote, consumption of black walnut has been linked to multiple health-promoting effects. For example, antioxidant, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory. Black walnut is an excellent source for phytochemical compounds including phenolic acids, flavonoids, and catechins. And those are a type of powerful antioxidant. Found to have good activity against the stationary phase of B. burgdorferi, Borrelia. It's the only pathogen that causes Lyme disease, so we'll just say that. It's a bacteria. And so anyway, it does have good effect against that. To control antibiotics like doxycycline, think on that for a moment. It's found to have good activity against this compared to control antibiotics. Because we know doxycycline is excellent against that. And anyway, so, but if we can get one that's natural, this might be a better option all around. So black walnut, how are we going to use this? What are we going to use? The parts that we're going to use: nuts, inner bark, fruit husk, leaves, and the sap. How would we use the sap? Did you know that you can actually tap other trees to make syrup beyond just your maple? Black walnut is one of them. Another one, of course, is some birches. And size 20 to 120 feet. 80 is a good, rule of thumb. 60 is a good rule of thumb. 120, that's pretty darn tall. I've never seen one that big, but I'm sure it exists somewhere. Okay, so edibility. Inner kernel of the rounded fruits. It's the ripened nut in autumn. Harvest after falling to the ground. You can, once you harvest them and you get them out of their outer shell, you can have them raw, candy them. You can grind them into a meal like flour, crush, and boil to extract oil. They're going to be oily just like you would have with your English walnuts. Now the sap, collected like maple sap to make syrup, sugar, or drink as water. Now identification, the stem pith is light brown. We saw the pith, the inside of it, so that's a way you could tell. The leaves are pinnately compound, and there's going to be 12 to 23 leaflets, and it often lacks that terminal one. And of course, if it did, then it would have an even number. And it's mildly spicy scented. To me, it smells citrusy, but in a kind of a spicy citrusy scent. It is so delightful. The leaf stalks and the leaf undersides are going to be slightly hairy, and that's going to be like very, you can feel it, but it's not like they're going to be hairy, like long hairs. And the hairs are solitary or in pairs, not clusters. The bark is going to be dark, deeply furrowed with dull ridges. We saw some pictures or the picture at the beginning. And the similar species is the butternut. However, we're going to find it rich soil, deciduous woods. That's going to be the same thing with the butternut. And how we use this medicinally. This is much more medicinal than the butternut. The only known ways to use the butternut medicinally as a mild laxative, but this black walnut has many other compounds that the butternut doesn't in comparison. Now, butternuts you can eat, just like you could the black walnut. You could tap those as well. They do look very similar, except for with the butternut, you're very often likely going to see that terminal leaflet. And of course, the nuts are going to be more like football shaped rather than round, like little balls, if you will. So anyway, medicinally, the inner bark, it's emetic, laxative. The bark chewed for toothaches is actually really good to have the tea for strengthening teeth as well. And the fruit husk, you can make a juice out of that. It's going to be antifungal, used for ringworm. You can use that externally like that. Chewed for colic, and poultice can be made out of that, and that'll help with inflammation. The leaf, you can make a tea out of it. We're talking a tisane. And it's going to be astringent, insecticidal. It's against bed bugs. So, of course, you don't, obviously you could maybe make a spray or something like that with it, make a liquid. And it's antifungal. The leaves and the green hulls, that's what we're talking about, is those summertime, those fresh green hulls. It's going to be traditionally used for diarrhea. Now, that's because it's astringent. That's going to be tightening to the tissue, antihelminth, and that means antiparasitic, especially against intestinal worms. This is very effective against tapeworms and other things that are living in our GI tract. Leaf extracts can be used for antibacterial activity to eliminate some of those viruses. It has a protective effect on cardiovascular system, possibly inhibitory effect on certain kinds of tumors. Now, word of caution, juglone is toxic to other trees, including the surface berry, the chestnut, and the pine, as well as plants like tomatoes and cabbage. It's also toxic to fish. You might wonder, what does that mean? Well, in a worst case scenario, and you needed to get some fish and you didn't really have anything, you could actually put this in the water and it would get you some fish, I guess. It's not the legitimate way to fish, but if it is a disaster situation and you're lost in the woods and you have to do something in a survival situation, sure, try whatever you can to save your life. And the fruit husk and the leaves may cause contact dermatitis. Almost anything can cause contact dermatitis depending on who you are. So always test the plants and always test any food before you eat it. We are dealing with a tree nut here, so if you're allergic to tree nuts, you might be allergic to black walnut as well. This is just the butternut as well. Quite a delightful plant. The leaves are shaped a little bit different. They're a little fatter. The black walnuts are a little thinner. And as you see, the shape of the nuts are more cylindrical and they are sticky, man. If you see one of those drop and you pick them up, they are definitely got some sticky hairs on it. Rather interesting. I have one growing out in my front yard. It is not doing too well, but I am hoping that squirrels and the nuts have fallen, and the squirrels have been moving some around too, but hopefully I have some of them I can actually keep and carry on the plant. So this is just showing some of the illustrations and the differences between them. As you can see, the black walnut, they're more rounded, the green hulls are there. Again, the butternut is not used in the same medicinal fashion, but they can be both eaten, and the butternut is basically a laxative, but the black walnut has a slew of medicinal benefits. That's not saying we diminish that the butternut is no good. It's actually a great tree as well, but black walnut is definitely one of the top three whenever you're dealing with parasites. Going to be dealing with like Hulda Clark dealt with black walnut, wormwood, and cloves, and those are, in my opinion, from my experience, from what I went through, definitely foundational for antiparasitic treatments, especially when dealing with intestinal worms. Now, if you want to see where you can get the pictures, and you can just check that out, it's the USDA. Highly recommend going out there. There's lots to learn in this world, and that's one way to do it. We're going to go outside, and we're going to check out some of the trees that are around. I will show you a butternut. I will also show you a black walnut. Definitely get out there and learn your surrounding areas. It's very important to do so. It's important to connect with nature. It's very good for us spiritually. And it's very good for us to be able to understand how we fit into the ecosystem. And it also gives you a different perspective. And I think it encourages people, and in fact, I know it does, to want to preserve the environment, because once you realize the natural beauty and realize how fragile it is, we really need to do our part and be good stewards of the land. So anyway, I do encourage you to do that. Now let's get outside and definitely check this out.
Now we're outside. I'm currently at Ohio State Park at the intersection of Dinner Bell Road and Route 381. Please forgive the noise. That is just the way it goes. What we're looking at here is quite a large collection of black walnut trees. This one here, rather sizable, rather tall. It is not fruiting or producing nuts, however you want to call it. Neither is this one. and neither is the one over there. But that is okay, because I did find one that is. But this gives you an idea of the size of these trees. They are absolutely huge. And when they are producing nuts, they produce a large volume. They do not produce every year. So if you see one that isn't producing, that doesn't mean it's not a black walnut. It just means it is not one of the years for it to make nuts. Not everything makes things every year. Even oak trees do not produce acorns every year. Okay, so don't get alarmed if you see a whole bounty one year and then nothing the next. It's just how the cycle goes. So as we go over here, there's a small one right here, where my finger is, goes all the way up to there. So this is quite a nice one. And this one actually does have nuts on it. So you see those up there? It's getting a little closer. Right up there is some. And then there's one right here. So you see, rounded, definitely not a butternut. Butternuts are going to be football shaped, and they're going to be sticky. These are not sticky, and they have that spicy citrusy. Gosh, I just love it. Smells so delicious. Now, what's interesting about this one? It has a terminal leaflet. Some of the other ones I saw earlier, they don't have that. And again, some do, some don't. If you're able to see up there, you see a lot do not have the terminal leaflet, but that's more typical there. And we'll pull some down here. Again, these don't, they're just paired off. But you will see both ways. If you look over there, on the other one, you don't have that terminal leaflet. But again, if you might be confusing it, you might be confusing it with a butternut. This is in fact not. This is in fact a black walnut, and this is about the size. This is a little, they're not ready yet, a little small, but this is a rather small tree. This could be the first year that this is actually producing because of its size. But anyway, there's quite a large collection of black walnuts here. And as far as the trees in this whole area, there's some up there where my finger is, and all through this area. That's the nice thing about the black walnuts. If you do plant them, the squirrels will assist you in planting new ones because they will move them to newer locations for you. Anyway, this is what you would see. Again, we know about the medicine. We talked about how you can eat these, of course. They are nuts, just like walnuts. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed, please do. Like the video, that'd be cool. I'm gonna head on out, and I do wish you the best. Peace and love, everybody. Get out there in nature. It's a really wonderful place to be. Spent a really nice time hiking this evening, and also did go whitewater rafting, so it was fantastic. All right, this is the view of the road exiting FFL. This is Dinner Bell Road. I often call it something else, but anyway, peace and love, everyone.